What's up everyone? In this video we're going to be sharing with you how you can succeed in your business for a long time without having to really screw around or worry about if you're doing the right thing. And the information in this video is based solely on some of the world's best business people of all time, Warren Buffett and Jack Welch, people who have spent decades upon decades proving themselves in business and staying ahead of the game and really succeeding. Warren Buffett has consistently been one of the richest people in the entire world for decades upon decades, and Jack Welch he pretty much turned around General Electric from being a very struggling company to one that became a thriving multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. So it's an incredible story. We're going to be sourcing from mainly these two people and some other great successful business people to provide you very condensed, curated content on business success so that you can succeed in your business. I think this will be very useful for anyone who's interested in a fundamental or foundational 101 on business success. Man, you are in for a treat. This is so exciting. So that's why you should listen to me. Let's just get straight to the chase. So you really want to succeed in business. Maybe you've done all right already. There's this great book. It's called 0 to 100 Million in No Time Flat. It's a very well-known book in the business space, and it's written by a guy who was a management consultant, and he helped a lot of very small businesses scale. He was also an investor, and he saw a lot, and we're talking a ton of companies succeed and fail, and he kind of just figured out what worked and didn't. And one of the things he said in the book, and there's things I agree with and disagree with. I trust Warren Buffett's advice more than him. You can tell I'm a very skeptical person, but there is one thing that I believe I've seen as a pattern, and that was, he said that most people who get from 0 to $1 million a year in their business, they're successful because they're good at sales. They're good at selling. But the problem is that this will not get you to the next level, to 10 million a year. And it won't get you to 20 million a year or 100 million a year. Later on, if you want to move up, you have to learn how to delegate. You have to learn how to hire. You have to learn how to let other people do tasks and trust that you've hired the right person and not micromanage them. You also have to learn all these other things. Those are some of the big ones though. And so the point is that there are different things that are needed, and what got you up until this point will not get you to possibly the next level, because there are different things at play on different levels. And from what I've seen on the highest of levels, I started from the top because that's where I thought would be the cream of the crop, the best people, highest players. So I found all the books written by billionaires. There's about 60 of them. You can Google it. And I went through this list and I really studied these books and all the interviews and videos of these people. I watched every interview I could, every video I could find online on the entire internet of Warren Buffett. It seems like a lot, but I would say it would take just a couple months. There's really not that much content out there on him where he's interviewed, because he is very conscious of his time, so he doesn't do many interviews. So I watch all this stuff, and I'm saying this because I've curated some of the best content, and I've found that when it comes to the highest level billionaires, the people who are playing at the highest peak level and have done so for many years, the cream of the crop, the best of the best, there's multiple strategies, but clear patterns on how they approach what they did and why they succeeded. And these are things that you need to start adopting. So of course there's different ways billionaires have succeeded. Some of them, they've done it in somewhat short to mid-term ways. Specifically, I'm talking people like Sumner Redstone of Viacom or Ted Turner. of numerous businesses. These billionaires found emerging, growing markets and industries, and then sometimes hostilely or through force or through negotiation, bought or took ownership of part or all of that business, made sure that it was succeeding and growing, and then just bought more and more stuff, and then they just held on to it for many, many years until they just became like this empire. However, I think the most enduring, timeless, most successful billionaires out there did it a different way. They didn't do it with like short-sighted, just complete acquisition stuff. They really understood, and here's the key, here's the big insight. Listen up. They understood business strategy, business economics, and that's pretty much it. Now, best example is Warren Buffett. He, as I said, is one of the people I respect the most. Not only for his business lessons, but his life lessons. And he really understood business economics and business strategy. He spent years of his life spending sometimes 8 hours a day just reading all these books on business history and competition and why this business did what they did and this business failing and all this stuff. And he really understood all the ins and outs of how business as a whole works. So he has this universe of understanding of businesses, and that's really what makes him successful. To put it in very simple terms, you might be like, oh, what is this Chinaman talking about? Talking all this strategery stuff. Fair enough, but in simple terms, it doesn't have to be complicated. In simple terms, all it is understanding why some businesses succeed and some businesses fail. That's the simple way of explaining business economics and business strategy. And Warren Buffett has a knack for making very complex topics very simple. And it's all just about that. Why do certain businesses succeed and fail? And if you can understand that, you can really apply it to your own business and make it succeed. So how exactly and why do businesses fail and succeed? Well, Warren Buffett actually summed it up very simply in 3 criteria. Of course, he could have made it a lot more complicated. He's also assessing all these numerous factors and macroeconomics and microeconomics and this and that. But he made it so simple. And he says, you don't have to overcomplicate it. So what did he say? And you can look any of this up if you don't believe me. 1, the first thing you need, and this is the first thing he looks for in a business he invests in, it has to have a durable competitive advantage, and that business has to be strengthening its competitive advantage every day. The second thing, able and honest management. So both are important, able and honest. The third one is a price that's right. You won't invest in a business if it's too expensive. Now, of course, is there a lot more possibly to this equation? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just that simple. And so I want to ask you the first important question, which is, what is your competitive advantage as a person and as a business? But mainly as a business. If you don't have an answer in the next 5 to 10 seconds, there's a problem. It could be a problem in understanding what that is, or it could be a problem in not having one at all. And those are 2 red flags, because you're clearly not focusing on this enough if you can't just say it right like that. And of course, that also means, are you strengthening it? Ask yourself that. Give me an answer in the next 5 seconds. And if you can't give me a concise answer and you have to think about it, that means you're not focusing on it, and you're definitely not making it an intentional effort to be strengthening that competitive advantage every day, which is a huge doozy, because complacency is the big killer of big businesses. If you get complacent, that's when the little guy takes you over. So those are huge questions that should be answered every day. Warren Buffett explains it like this. He says that it's the nature of other businesses and competitors to copy you and try and steal what you're doing. If there's money to be made, of course they're going to come in. You can't get mad that they're trying to copy you. And what prevents that is a competitive advantage. And if you're not strengthening every day, it's getting deteriorated every day. And at some point, they'll eventually, get to your castle because your competitive moat has disappeared. So now you might be wondering, oh my goodness, well, what is my competitive advantage? How many competitive advantages are out there? It might seem like there's like an infinite amount, or you don't know exactly what they are. It would help, of course, if they were crystallized, if you had like a specific list. Well, there's actually someone who can do that for you. Me. I'm going to do it right now. Now, this is not a comprehensive list for sake of brevity. However, it is going to touch on some of the biggest ones. So stay tuned. Keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times. You're in for a treat. So what are these competitive advantages? The first one is the most obvious and yet I would say hardest to do, and that is price. The lowest price wins. The problem is it's the most competitive sometimes because it's a winner take all type scenario or winner take majority type scenario. If you're not the cheapest price in town, and you're just competing on price, you're going to lose out in business eventually. So you really have to have some advantage that allows you to guarantee the lowest price you can offer to your customers. And of course, commodity-based businesses like this are very tough because of that reason. What if someone squeezes you down? And this has been done ruthlessly in China and many other countries for many decades. But some competitors will operate at a loss just to drive you out of business so that they can take up market share. That means they're literally hurting themselves to try and kill you. So it's a very competitive and tough way of doing it if you're solely focused on one of these. Now, as a quick note, you can use numerous competitive advantages at once, and you'll notice later on that some of the best companies in the world, that's what they do. They don't just rely on one. So price is one of those, and there's numerous ways to have a guaranteed or pretty strong advantage that's competitive and that you can strengthen when it comes to price. There's only a few, and they're usually pretty tough to really get going, and it's really tough, which is why most CEOs don't really recommend strictly focusing on a commodity-based thing, because let's face it, there's really no brand loyalty or customer loyalty there. I mean, a customer could, let's say you're a plastic fork company and you sell plastic spoons and forks. Ain't nobody cares about your brand. They just want the cheapest fork as long as the quality is decent. That's what I want. So it doesn't matter if I've been buying from this fork company for 5 years. If someone can sell that cheaper, I'm going to them. Very tough business. One of the biggest ways people have an advantage on this is their business has so many factories and so much stuff that they can create them at a much cheaper cost. And the fancy pants business term for this is economies of scale. You don't need to worry about that. The point is, the biggest guy has that advantage. And of course, even then, it's not for certain. Nowadays, you can compete against, you must be competing against people on the other side of the world. So if China or some other country happens to have the economics, the hardworking factory employees willing to work at below minimum wage, the natural resources and everything else to compete and sell it cheaper than you, you're screwed. So second competitive advantage. The next three, and I'm just going to touch on these last three, and that's going to be it for this video, come from Jack Welch's book, Winning. These three are what he calls the 3 old war horses of competition: cost, quality, and service. And I'm going to throw in the last one, which is brand. So there's actually 5 in total. Brand, I think, is the big one, but I think all of them are really important. So quality, pretty obvious, but let me give you some more specific examples. Let's say a suit. You want to buy a suit or any type of clothing, really. There's different price points of clothing, and of course, as the price goes up, usually the quality goes up. And so obviously, if you can make a better quality suit that's on point, people will pay more for it or will flock to you. Now, of course, there's companies that have exploited this. There's some really overpriced brands of clothing out there like Armani, where the quality and the stitching and fabric is just not up to par. I mean, it's above average, but it's not much better than a bunch of other companies that sell the same quality for cheaper, although there's still premium prices, both of them. But it can be exploited, and that kind of can ruin your reputation. Even if it's quality, the price is just like crazy, and customers get smart and realize that. But having said that, there's one for you. So this one's probably a bit of common sense, but overlooked. If you can jack up the quality, keep the price as low as possible, you're going to do huge things. Walmart was probably one of the biggest pioneers of this on a large scale, and they became a multi-billion-dollar company, and Sam Walton became the richest person in the world by doing this. It wasn't even his idea. Based off his book, he saw the trend coming, and he gave up on his old way of doing business, which was the norm back then, where everyone else pretty much had to, it was a penny and dime retail store. So what that meant was that everything was like super expensive. If you wanted to buy anything like utensils, dishes, mowing lawn, it was through the roof expensive. And Walmart and discount retailers like them flipped it on its head. They made everything super cheap, which got everyone to come in and buy it. And they would make their money off the super thin margins and massive amount of people, the volume of people that would come in and buy it. Rather than have huge margins, super expensive quality products, and very few customers. So that's one way of doing it. Keep the price as low as possible, and then the quality as high as possible. Jack Welch recommends doing this to an extreme degree. Don't just look for 10% improvements, 50% quality improvements, 50% plus reductions in price. Find a way of doing it without reducing quality. Wow, you will be ahead of the pack. Now that one's pretty obvious, so let's move on to the next one, which was, cost was already mentioned, that's price. The last one from Jack Welch is service. According to his book, service is the easiest one to improve upon when you're struggling. Why? Because oftentimes you have geographic advantages and you have other person-to-person advantages. People like seeing others in person. People like smiling and interacting with other people because we're one of the most social species alive. Therefore, especially in this modern world where we're competing internationally, you have the advantage with your local customers on service when your competitor is all the way across the world. Let's say you're a US-based company that sells child products. Let's say it's like organic baby wash, just a random example. And you're competing with China, who's on the other side of the world. But your customers are in your backyard. They're Americans. Well, China might be able to sell higher quality products. They may even be able to sell these for cheaper. But guess what? You can do all this customer service stuff in person because they are in your country, your county, your state. So what do? There's a million things you could do to have better service. You can hand deliver stuff to them. You could throw in fresh baked cookies. You could personalize every bonus gift because you see these people in person. You could stop by and give surprise visits. You could throw in flowers on their birthday. You could do all this stuff in person, do a dance, entertain them, deliver it faster, do more checkups in person, organize a show for them, figure out whatever the heck it is they want, understand their culture better, maybe all these things. You get the point. There's a million things and a million books on customer service. It's a huge way of getting ahead. And that leads us to the last one, which is brand. Now, brand is arguably just another word for reputation. And it's built from the goodwill and all those other things that I already mentioned. Service being probably the biggest, but quality, cost are others. The dangerous part about brand is it's fragile. It's very valuable, but it could take 20 years to build and 10 seconds to destroy. Now, what's so valuable about brand? It's what makes you able to sell the same exact commodity product for 100 times more. It also allows you to have severe customer loyalty so that even if your competitors have better price or quality or whatever, your customers will still stick with you at least for a moderate point until you hit a breaking point where the cost and quality is just so much better than you, then they have to leave, which happens sometimes. So brand is huge, and it's probably the biggest. Goodwill is another one. Customer service or any type of service is a great way of building that goodwill and generating that brand, because if you're known for being that company that goes the extra mile and hand delivers things and delivers it to the car of every customer and surprises your customer with bonus gifts, those feelings and memories get stored when they recognize your company name and you build that reputation. Of course, again, it can be easily tarnished. Like if you get lazy or you hire some really lazy, rude people, that could potentially destroy your brand. So you gotta be careful. Having said it, it's really worth it for those reasons mentioned. I want to give you some huge examples. Nike, Legos, Apple, the milk industry. Those are some huge examples. Nike sells a commodity. They sell shoes. Yet why are they able to charge so much more for a shoe, even though it's roughly the same product quality and there's been a lot of tests done on these shoes? It's because they didn't position themselves as a shoe company like all the other competitors, Reebok, blah blah blah, Puma. What they did was they elevated themselves and became an idea. They honor world-class athletes. It wasn't even about shoes anymore. It was about world-class athletes. Let's look at Legos. Legos dominates and destroys all those other building block companies, knockoff commodity toys for kids. Trust me, I've seen them. My parents have bought them from China. They're pretty much like Legos. They're knockoff Legos, but they're not Legos. Why do so many people willingly will pay 10 times the price for the same Legos just to have that Lego logo on them? It's because they became more than just a brick-laying company for children toys. They started using storytelling and they became a whole story. It's not just building blocks, it's Harry Potter, and they included instructions to build these huge Harry Potter figures and Spider-Man and Avengers and Barbie, and you could build all these different things with Legos. It wasn't just blocks. They didn't just give you blocks like the commodity competitors. They made it into a story. Let's look at Coca-Cola or Hershey's. Those are huge ones that Warren Buffett often talks about. People will literally go to another store if that store runs out of Hershey's. They would rather go to another store and pay 10 times or 100 times the price for the same block of chocolate if it was a store brand or Hershey's. Why? Because of that brand value and reputation that Hershey's, the brand, has built. Coca-Cola, same thing. There's been countless scientific double-blind taste tests. You can look it up on Google Scholar in like 10 seconds right now. Not right now. I got to continue with this. Later on, you can look this up. There's been plenty of double-blind taste tests done on Coca-Cola versus a store brand cola. And guess what? People prefer the store brand just as much, if not more, than Coca-Cola. So why are people willing to pay 10 times the price for roughly the same taste in cola? It's because of all the brand value, the economic goodwill, that's the term Warren Buffett uses, the reputation that Coca-Cola has built up and continues to maintain with all of its advertisement and customer loyalty, producing activities on social media and traditional media. I want to throw in a few last examples and we'll call it a night. There's Apple. This is a huge one. There's actually a Steve Jobs speech, which you can find on YouTube, where he talks about a lot of these examples, mainly Nike. And then later on, he kind of stole that and used it for his own company, Apple. See, Apple elevated themselves beyond just being a PC company. There's plenty of PC companies, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Acer, just these like nameless commodities competing in the same electronics market. He elevated himself and made his company into something more than just another electronics company. He made his company about representing the misfits, the outcasts, the square pegs in the round holes. It was about a movement and identity of a certain type of person that this product exemplified and honored, just like Nike honored the athletes, which attracted wannabe athletes, and for Apple, people who were proud to be the outcasts and the misfits in society. The Gandhis of the world, the Shakespeares, the Einsteins, and so forth. That was a very strategic choice, and now it's the most valuable company in the world. It's the largest cap company to ever exist in humankind after Steve Jobs died. So, plenty more examples, but I think you get the point. Brand also a huge competitive advantage. It's a kind of wishy-washy one. It's not as mathematical or numeric as some of the others, like pricing. So just be cautious of that. There's plenty of brand experts that are willing to take your money and do like branding stuff that really doesn't help much. So I would focus on the first three: cost, quality, service, and that will help with your brand enough. And if you really want to push brand a little bit further, the only thing I'd recommend is what I mentioned. Find some way of elevating yourself to that status like Apple did, like Nike did, and become more than the commodity that you're selling. And man, will you last when times get tough. Thanks for watching this whole thing. Hit the subscribe button below if you like this video. Join my VIP email list on my website if you want more updates. And any questions you have, just contact me and I'll try and help you out. Thanks. Peace.